Yes, I think so, yeah. Yeah, you sent it to me, yeah.
Undefined this morning. Yeah, I am that way as well on a random basis.
I should have.
Good morning. Welcome to Friday. This is the part of the conference where when it comes to coming up with ideas, how to introduce people, I start to run out of them. Fortunately, Mike doesn't run out of material. Please welcome Mike Hanson.
For the next few minutes here, I'm just going to go through and discuss, sort of broadly speaking, what the super templates are and what needs they can fulfill, and then spend a little bit of time specifically highlighting super stuff, which is where I tend to use, I spend most of my time. It's the tool that I find most useful personally. I've been creating templates since, or it used to be models since probably 1989, I think is when I first officially released them as a product, although there was a public domain model for a year or two prior to that. So I've been doing this for 30 years now, astonishingly enough. It's kind of hard to believe. Yeah, it is frightening. Yes, quite. And over that time, I've collected sort of a bunch of tools, and many of them have made it into the super templates. I find that there are very different need cases and use cases for different situations you come into play. Some of these you may find are a perfect fit for your needs, and other ones you just kind of scratch your head and say, no, I don't think so at all. So I'm just going to walk through them, and if you go ping, oh, maybe that'll be handy, maybe it'd be helpful. If you want more information, certainly feel free to come and ask for more clarification. I expect that a lot of these things people already have as well. So the browse templates are a catch-all for all sorts of different types of things that are browse related. Many of these things were initially created back before Clarion had kind of extended what their browsers can do. So things like edit in place were put in place long before Clarion did edit in place, but eventually Clarion did edit in place. So some of them you may find that out of the box you get enough stuff from Clarion, but there's enough additional things in there in terms of just making your browsers work a bit better that it's worthwhile taking a look at it, but I'm not going to dive too deeply into that. I just wanted to just sort of comment that those things are browse related. Field filler is a very special used case where you want your user to be able to go in and just apply a value across a broad range of records. The initial use case was somebody said, well, I've got this user, and as the year goes through, he adds various values to this field, and then at the end of the year, he'd like to just be able to reset them all to a default value. But every year, he changes his mind as to what that value is going to be, and ultimately, there's a bunch of fields he's decided he might want to change in the same way, so can you do that? So this just specifically lets the users go in and apply stuff. And of course, it hooks in with some of the other templates like tagging and such things. So if the user happens to say, these 15 records, change them all en masse, it's quite handy for that kind of thing. So let's say, for example, you had an area code field. And then they decided, hold on, wait, everybody who's in such and such a city gets the new area code. Bang, you could apply that en masse like that. Import-export, handy for getting data in and out of your program. You can define exports in terms of specifying which fields you want to export, the format of those fields. If it's a date field, you can specify whatever date formats you need to have. And you can actually predefine sets of these. So if there's a standard export they'd like to do every month, they can say, these are the fields that I like to export every month, and then they save that as an export and automatically do that. Similarly, they can grab information to pull it in for an import. This, by the way, is all CSV based because it all tends to be dealing with flat files. We never did make the jump to doing it in XML, and maybe that'll be a major upgrade in the coming up not too distant future. Invoice is very handy if you are dealing with entry of header child records where you've got a browse of customers and you say, now I want to go and add a new invoice for the customer. Invoice pops up, the header's there, and of course the children are in a browse. But the problem is if you update those child records, they're getting written to the file. and then they say, hold on, wait, cancel, I don't want to do that, but all of a sudden you have to worry about cleaning up the child records. So what it does is it gives you an in-memory browse for those children so that they're all maintained in place. And then when you say, now I'm done with this thing, it updates the parent record and all the child records get updated at the same time, all within a transaction. So quite handy for that. I'll talk about passcode first and then limiter. Passcode is where you want to either protect your program against software piracy. If you're concerned that people are going to copy it around, move it around, it just prevents people from doing that. It also supports the concept of trial modes. So you can have it have your software automatically let people use it for 30 days and then stop. It can stop it completely, or it can just restrict certain aspects of the system. You can also use it if you bill your customers for yearly support, and if they don't pay you for the support, the program stops working, or some part of the program starts working, just to pressure them into to actually paying up. The limiter software is in a similar vein where it is controlling usage of your software. The difference with the limiter is you may have said to your customer, yes, you can use this for up to 5 users, but if you want more than that, you need to go up the next pricing tier. This controls the number of concurrent users of the system to enable that kind of site license pricing for you. So, QBE, Merle could get up here and tell you about QBE because it's one of his favorite things. So QBE is great in that you're never quite sure what your users are looking for in their data. So they can go in either with their normal update form, which they're very familiar with and comfortable in, and just start typing values into various fields and say, go find them. Or there's a wizard interface where it sort of leads them by the hand to enter all the different criteria. It creates a normal Clarion filter, which can be applied to, to a browse if you want. It uses match statements within the filter structure so that that's automatically passed through the back end. So if you happen to be using a SQL back end, those searches can be very, very quick. The results can be displayed either in a browse, or you can actually have it just walk through all the matching records, because the user might say, well, that guy's in here somewhere. They give as much information as they can and say, go find him, next, 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 up, boom, that's the one I want, please edit that one. So it's pretty interactive for that. It can also be used in conjunction with tagging so that it can go and find all the search results and tag them all, and then you can actually do a subsequent search to say, now, based upon the fact that I found all of the women, take away any women who don't live in Toronto. And then it would say, okay, now I've only got the Toronto women. So you can do all kinds of intersections like that. And then you can, once you finish off, you can say, show me those results. And okay, and then if you happen to have tagging as well, you can say, take a few more of these away or add a couple more, and then process those individually. So QBE is quite handy for that. Security. Of course, your users need to log on to the system. There's certain areas that some users can get into, certain areas that they're not supposed to. You can predefine all of those areas either as levels or as doors. The most common thing I think would be doors, where you say, okay, this is an area that is protected, that's an area that's protected, and you can explicitly say this person can do this, but they can't do that. You can also use something called levels, which is a little bit simpler than doors, where you say, okay, a secretary can do some things, her boss can do more stuff, and the owner of the company can do everything. Levels, I find, get used less often than doors do. There is also built into it runtime security. So if you don't really know what your users want to protect in their system, because everybody wants to protect something different, your user can actually at runtime say, hey, I want to apply a runtime door to this thing, so it is protected against either running it at all, or certain people can insert a record but they can't change records, or they can change records but can't delete records. This type of situation. So the fact that you can define all that stuff at runtime or define it yourself is quite handy, quite flexible. Super tagging is something that I really couldn't live without. I find that there's never been an application that I've created where my users didn't need to say, I need to select some of something, now go do it. And tagging is very flexible in that it can do all of the standard. And you know what? Why don't I'm going to pull up an example of tagging here, because there's a few different ways that it can work. Get out of this one into. The two together work very well. Yeah, they do work.
Merle, just a reminder, if you've got a comment up here, Merle, front, here, right over here. Just so everybody online can hear.
Yeah, so I'll repeat it. So
Merle said you should have both.
both QBE and tagging, and they do work hand in hand together very nicely. We want this here. And I'm just going to go ahead and run that because I had it compiled earlier. There we go. So tagging is pretty much as you'd expect it to be, tag individual records, but there's a great deal of flexibility as far as how you present that. So in this case, I just chose to put a whole bunch of buttons on the screen so people could see what they wanted to do with it. But you can hide all those buttons and just have it all appear in a little pop-up menu. And there's a bunch of neat stuff. For example, I can go on here and I can say I want to flip everything, or they tag a few records and then say, okay, that's all I want. Oh wait, you know what? The rest of these I know they're going to be fine, so let's just tag the rest. Bang. So there's a bunch of handy interactive features as far as letting your users work with it. You can say, show me just the tagged records or just the untagged records, or go back to showing all of them to me. You can navigate to jump through the tags. But then there's also this neat little thing where you can save a set of tags. So if the person went to a lot of trouble to tag a bunch of records and they're working away at them on a particular day, and then they want to work on them the next day and they're worried that somebody's going to turn the machine off, they can go ahead and say, I want to save a set of tags. And hey, look, I saved a set here a while back. And then if I cleared all those, untag all, and then I could load those back up again, and it automatically pulls them back in again. So that can be quite handy. And the neat thing there is that you can control that all programmatically. So it's not just something that you drop onto a browse and then not worry about it. If you want to start individually setting tags in your code, unsetting tags, saving sets, unsaving sets, you'll find that there are a lot of situations where you just start doing that in hand code because it really lets you work with subsets of records quickly and easily. Tags can be stored on disk, they can be stored in memory, they can be stored in a database file. It's completely up to you. You can copy tag sets from one to another. So it's not just tagging, it's basically almost set logic to some extent with the flexibility that you have in there. This is sort of the normal tagging interface. You also have, if users tend to be a lot of times more comfortable with Windows-style marking, so I can go click, control click, control click. I can hit click and shift click, control click to take stuff away. So it's and you can even do things like I think control space does it as well. Control space, control space. So it's got all the normal Windows-style working. So ultimately, it's very flexible, and it's sort of the way your users are going to expect to interact with their systems, because everything from File Explorer onwards uses tagging in some respect, and marking, if you want to call it that. The final thing I'd like to talk about is super stuff, and we'll go into a bit more detail with it. You know what, let's jump to, let's jump in here. Super stuff is essentially a collection of all of the things that I didn't feel were big enough to have a template of its own, so I just kind of threw it into super stuff. So you'll find super stuff is probably the widest range of tools that are available from me in a single product, and they do cover a wide different range of use cases. The key thing for me on a daily basis that I use in super stuff, and is in particular very, very good because of our need to use SQL, is views. As you know, with Clarion, it talks to SQL just fine, but it tends to talk to it in a somewhat piecemeal fashion. And you've seen a number of people do sessions this week saying, well, you're best off you use a view and specify a filter and this and that. But hand coding those view structures is a little weird and arcane and tedious and not always intuitive, which is why a lot of times we tend to lean on things like the process procedure, because it automatically writes the view structure for us. But in many cases, the process procedure is overkill. You're in a procedure, you just want to process a few records. Why can't you just do it right there? Why have it call a separate procedure where you don't have access to all your local variables in that procedure? So you just want to have it written in source. And that's what the view manager does. So let's go ahead and take a look at, where are we here? Clarion. Isn't it there already? Is this tagging? I have a feeling this is tagging. Yeah. So let's say, for example, here is browse people. And we want to access records in a view within browse people. Could be anything that we need to do. You can go to the extensions and you can say, I would like to just generate a little view structure inside this procedure. And this works in pretty much any kind of procedure, whether it's a browse, form, source procedure, whatever you need. Where is it? There we go. So it'll pop up and say, okay, fine, what do you want it to be called? So let's say I'm going to say view people. It gives you a lot of flexibility as far as trying to write a fair bit of logic for you, as far as it'll even write a little procedure that will process all the records for you automatically, and you can just jump in and add little snippets of codes. You don't even have to write the loop structure if you don't want to. Here, we got to specify a key for this thing. So here's the super stuff view to view people. We're going to add a people file to that, and let's change the key to the name key there. Now, if we go to range limits, all the standard things you'd expect from a range limit, where you can specify that you want to control certain values, any filter. But the nice thing here is you're not just limited to typing in a filter expression. If you want to, you can actually prompt yourself through it. So you could say, I only want records where, I don't know, the birthday is equal to, and instead of selecting a field, I want to type a value like that. So well, the birthday is today. And it's a constant expression, so I don't even want you to pass in the function today within the filter string. Just take the value of today and put it directly into the filter expression itself. And then if it happens to be an expression, there's a string, you can say, oh yeah, and by the way, wrap it in quotes, because I do need to make sure that it gets in there in the right fashion. So you can build up all of these pieces by hand rather than having to manually hand code your filter expression. So it's willing to kind of lead you by the hand as much as you would like. You can also specify custom order fields or use a hand-coded order. It's completely up to you. And you can specify as a default it says I'll project all the fields for you, or you can say no, there's only a couple of fields that I care about. So I'm going to grab, I don't know, just the name field. Maybe I'll grab the birthday while I'm at it. Birthday. And then when you're done, it will generate a lovely bit of code in here for you. So let's go in and take a look at view people. So this is the, actually I think I must have, do I have two of these in here? So for some reason it's generated it all in here, but I'll have to figure out why that happened. Or did I, oh, I might have turned it off. It builds a little local view manager to deal with it for you with an initialization method and a take record method. Odd. Oh, hold on, I hit module instead. That was my problem. Here we go. I somehow got into the module view. I don't know how that happened. Oh, did it again? Oh, I know what's going on. It was that search I did yesterday. I don't want whole solution. I just want current document. That's what the problem is. Okay. Okay, so there's the view, it projected, and that explains why we were getting all the fields in there. And then it creates the local class, so you could even add more methods to it if you wanted to. It automatically initializes it when the files are opened, automatically kills it when the files are closed, and then the initialization routine says if I'm already initialized, I don't need to do it again. And then it goes ahead and it does all the standard stuff that if this was a normal process procedure, it's going to be managing as view in a similar fashion. You'll see that because we told it that this thing was an expression and to not put the today function directly into the filter, it just puts the value. It automatically writes that code for you. It handles the sort order correctly. And I think that's probably all the code that's in there. Yeah. So if I wanted to use this thing in code, all I would end up having to do is manage view people, open, reset, loop until that dot next does not equal level benign, and then do whatever to your record and manage view people dot close. Bang. So the entire intent of this thing, you end up getting it to manage all the details, and of course this was a very simple example, but in a more complex example where you have multiple files and they're all joined, there's a lot of flexibility as you can control whether your joins are inner joins or outer joins, and it handles that completely fine. So I find with dealing with SQL, because views are the best way of doing it, this saves me a whole lot of time on a day-to-day basis. So, let's take a look at a few of the other things inside of super stuff just while we're here, and then we will wrap up. We'll skip threaded browse form for the moment. Well, I could show it to you. I think there might be a small bug in there I discovered the other day. So we'll see if this works here. So threaded browse form is handy when you have multiple, you've got to browse, and when you want to update these records, you don't want it to just call a form in SDI mode where you can't access the browse anymore. You want to be able to update that customer, but then immediately jump back to the browse, find another customer, maybe pop them up, and have the forms pop up on separate threads. So you could then see the customers side by side, compare them back and forth. We'll try this, but I have a feeling it might GPF on me here. I just discovered this the other day. I'm not sure what's changed. So we change this guy, and then let's change this guy. And window, where's the other one here? So now we've got the two entries side by side. So it's kind of neat that you can do that kind of MDI stuff. So it's quite handy, and yeah, here I thought. And it gets confused at this point. Okay, there we go. That guy's still up. So somehow the bind is not getting managed. It wasn't GPFing, it was just the bind error showing up. So I'll have to take a look at that one. Wrap browse field is quite handy when you've got a long text field that you want to have automatically wrapped in whatever space you want, and you don't know how wide the browse is going to be. You'll see that as I'm moving back and forth there, it's automatically resizing the content to fit into there. So that's a handy little feature just to make your browsers look a little bit nicer for those text fields. Toggling the active field in the browse. So in this situation, I'm viewing all the active records. Just show me the inactive records or show both. And the reason you'd want something like this is it's never good to delete data. So go ahead and mark it as inactive. It's automatically filtered out, but every once in a while they need to go back and find those records. So this is quite handy for that. Select cancel support. Okay, so I think what this is, so here I am, I'm calling it in select mode, and this is cancel. But if we pop this browse up normally, instead of saying cancel, it would automatically say close. So this just makes it smart enough that if you call a browse in select mode rather than normal browse mode, it automatically manages your close button to say cancel. It's a small feature, but it's a nice tweak. Entry locators respond to enter key. Normally you have to tab out. It'd be kind of nice if you could tap, tap, tap and hit enter. That's a natural thing that people want to do. For report processes, you can ask for date range. There's also a calendar control built in. You can choose a non-default printer for your report. It automatically saves the printer. chooses a different one, lets them print the report, and then resets it back to the default printer afterwards. A very basic exporting to CSV, nothing compared to the import-export stuff, but if you just need something quick and dirty, you just want to blast the records out, it's there. Hide progress window on it for report or process. So if rather than using the MHView to hand code something, you still want to use a progress report or a process procedure, but you know that it's going to be quick and you don't want the progress window to flash up in front of them, this automatically hides it so that you don't have to see it. Situations where you've got multi-tabs, but you want to have as a default tab one other than the first tab. Just a handy little thing to say I want to do, I want some other tab to come up as the first one. Tab pop-ups, it's kind of like the tab tree thing, where there's too many tabs to see, so you can go bang and right-click on the tab areas, and it automatically does that for you. So. And as you can see, it automatically shows a check mark in front of the one that you're currently on. So just a handy little navigation feature. Hide tabs during insert. I can't remember why that's done, but there's a reason why it does that. Oh, I see. There's certain tabs where until you actually get that record in there, let's say sales history, doesn't apply. We're almost done. So you can say there's certain tabs I don't want to see because there's no need for them to see that because they haven't got the customer in yet, so there's no point in me showing them the sales history tab. You've got drag and drop, so you can pull it from one place to another. You can say, my users still want to hit the enter key to go from field to field, so you can do that. Quick install date entry, where you want the quick little keys to say M to go to the start of the month, H to go to the end of the month, that type of thing is in here. Limiting a procedure to one thread. Triggering a calendar lookup, a very handy thing. Drop buttons and drop menus are kind of neat. So a drop button is these standard controls you don't see normally in Clarion, where you have a little arrow and you can drop it down and it changes the value. So that's kind of a nice thing versus just a normal drop list. Quick install data entry. Drop menu is the same idea. But in this case, it has a pop-up menu rather than a list popping up below it. Just standard Windows features that we don't have built into Clarion. It's kind of nice to have. Resizing templates, I could spend a day talking about resizing, but you can do some pretty complex things in terms of, and there's splitter bars built in and fairly complex things you can do. So lots of fun stuff there. A hand-coded view I talked about already, and I probably go off to a help file here to describe some of the other features. But ultimately, there's a whole bunch of things in there which I tend to rely on a pretty regular basis. They really do come in handy for a lot of things I do day to day. So if you don't have any of my templates, buy this one first. If you have all of my templates except this one, buy this one now. We've got a special on sale. The sale is 20% off, probably till the end of the month or something like that. So I know a lot of you people already have many of my templates, but if you don't, certainly start with this one as a sample because you'll find that it definitely will save you time, and of course, time is money. So, thank you all.
Thanks, Mike.